Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, 1994 USA World Cup Time Machine episode. 94, the year that the United States of America hosted the World Cup. USA. A great time to be an American in 1994, the start of soccer as we know it today in the United States. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the World Cup Time Machine.
Well, hey everyone, I'm Nick Pateris alongside my good friend and fellow host, Michael Yami. Together we are the Sons of a Pitch, an American soccer podcast, and we are coming at you with our World Cup Time Machine, a review of the United States men's national team, and in this episode, the U.S. Soccer Federation's hosting of the 15th FIFA World Cup here in the United States. Mike, I was 9 years old during this World Cup. We're going to touch into some of those memories as a kid, but I'm sure this is something that stands out in your mind as a soccer fan, right?
It does. This was like the first soccer game I ever truly paid attention to was the World Cup final, Italy and Brazil from Pasadena in the Rose Bowl on my birthday. It was my 9th birthday. That day I was actually in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, when my grandparents had just moved out. We had just completed a cross-country trip from Toronto to Vancouver. It took about 2 weeks to drive it out. It was a fantastic trip, something I will never, ever forget. And in that time in Vancouver was the final, the first game I really ever paid attention to.
Well, Mike, we're definitely going to get into some more stories because, again, this was a watershed moment for a lot of young soccer fans, especially us, guys who are in our 30s now, who are really what the MLS is marketing towards, who the USMNT is marketing towards, people our age and within, 5-10 years of us. This was huge. Now, but let's not get it too carried away right now. Let's look at a little bit of what happened in World Cup 94. It was hosted by the United States, our first ever time hosting the World Cup, and I think only the second time in North America. I think Mexico had hosted the 1984 World Cup previously. How did it shake out? Brazil wins the tournament in a dramatic penalty kick shootout over Italy after one of my favorite childhood players, Roberto Baggio, skies his attempt, one of the worst penalty kicks ever, especially for a player of his caliber. Okay, sure, Brazil still had to go on and make the next penalty, and there were still maybe some other things there, but the fact that Roberto Baggio, one of the best players in the world at that time, kicks a field goal, maybe it's because he was playing in the United States, and he tried to kick a field goal instead of put his penalty shot on frame, that really did it in for the Italian side, and Brazil with the victory, Italy coming in second. Now, third place game, Sweden defeats Bulgaria, a couple of countries who nowadays we really don't think of as soccer or football powerhouses, but Sweden and Bulgaria played third and fourth. And by the way, who from that Bulgarian squad ended up tied for the top scorer in the tournament? Hristo Stoichkov of Chicago Fire legend ended up scoring 6 goals that tournament to help Bulgaria take a 4th place finish in World Cup 94. So that's kind of how the top 4 teams shook out. A couple of things to keep in mind and to remember, some memories there. And yeah, that again, Hristo Stoichkov here. We've got the Chicago Fire connection with World Cup 94. Speaking of a Chicago connection, World Cup 94 opened in Soldier Field in Chicago. What an honor for this city to have. There's so much soccer history in the country, but especially in Chicago, from the ethnic teams to the youth clubs to developing some top players. Even nowadays, how many national team players have roots here in the Chicago area? So what a day for Soldier Field in Chicago to open the ceremonies. And crazy story, Mike, after I got married, the first apartment that my wife and I had together, our neighbor across the hall was an accountant. He was at that game because his accounting firm was hired by U.S. Soccer. They represented U.S. Soccer. So he's there at Soldier Field, and he's telling me this years later, and he still remembers it vividly. He's like, yeah, man, this is 2012 we're talking, and he's remembering 1994 opening ceremonies. He's in the suite because his firm was doing all the accounting, and he's like, he meets Bill Clinton. President Bill Clinton was there at the opening ceremonies. Like, this is the kind of impact that this tournament had on USA's psyche and their soccer psyche. A few other little bits of trivia. It was still only 24 teams. It didn't expand to the 32 team field until the next World Cup, 98. But this was the first World Cup to award 3 points for a win. Previously, you only got 2 points for a win in your group to help you advance out of the group. But this time they moved it to the 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, 0 for a loss format that we're all familiar with nowadays. Now, you think that was in response to the 1990 World Cup that had the lowest goals per game average to that point? Maybe they wanted teams to go after the victory a little bit more. But again, after all these years of using the 3-1-0 point system, I think it's only fair, right? I think that makes for a better quality tournament and is a more fair way to decide who advances out of the group stage. So that's the setup here, Mike. That's what we're working with. We are working with the first ever World Cup in the United States, only the second ever to be hosted by a North American nation. And we have the opening ceremonies in our kind of hometown here, our major metro area here in Chicago. By the way, it's only the United States men's national team's second World Cup in the modern era. They had gone from 1950s World Cup performance to 1990 without ever qualifying. They go 0-3 in 1990 in Italy. And now here we are hosting the World Cup, Mike. This is huge.
It is. It is real huge. And to kind of tie it to the future here, it's a shame that Chicago, I've just been waiting to get this first graphic up because I've got a picture from the opening ceremony in Chicago at Soldier Field, just to the left of the box score with the lineups. But, tying it to the future, Chicago won't even be a host city in the 2026 World Cup, which the U.S. is going to host with Canada and Mexico. And that is just a shame.
Thanks, Rahm Emanuel. Thanks.
Yeah, right. Thanks a lot. Now you're not even mayor anymore, and you already screwed up. So it'll be interesting. You say Bill Clinton was at the 94 opening ceremonies. Well, there's a lot of talk that the president that was in office, because it's coming up any day now, the president that was in office, Donald Trump, may be attending that tournament because he was instrumental in bringing 2026 World Cup into the United States. So, it'll be interesting to see if we have another presidential holdover, if it'll be maybe a second term of Joe Biden, if he's still alive, or maybe Kamala Harris or whoever president may be in 2026, as well as Donald Trump, if he's still alive, at the game there, since he had stated to the FIFA president that he can't wait to be there at that opening match. So be interesting to see what happens there. We wanted to tie it all into the future. But anyways, we got to talk about the games themselves. 4 games in total for the United States. The first game up was a draw, 1-1 with Switzerland. Here's my little photo over there on the left of Soldier Field. That does not look like Soldier Field, does it?
Not anymore, it doesn't. Chicago Park District did a little bit of a remodel there. Much to the chagrin of Chicago sports fans, that's for sure.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, there you go. 1-1 against Switzerland.
But they didn't play in Chicago, by the way.
The U.S. didn't play in Chicago.
Right, and here's the trivia of that game, Mike. That was the first ever indoor World Cup finals game.
Yes.
The U.S. played Switzerland at the Pontiac Silverdome indoors up in Detroit.
Right. Which, if you guys want a little bit of fun, go check out Pontiac Silverdome now. Well, maybe like 5 or 10 years ago. It was just this completely abandoned building that is just really cool. You see like the roof collapsed in on the fields, snow everywhere, and there's weeds growing in the suites and all that kind of stuff on the 300 level, and just really cool stuff. But the Silverdome was the first indoor World Cup game, and that was the United States against Switzerland. A 1-1 draw kind of set them off into moving into the second round, which was really impressive, especially, you see now host nations usually do get through. But Eric Winalda with a great free kick. Nick, elaborate.
Find the highlight on that one, man. Right? Like Switzerland was able to score on their free kick. And I was in prepping for this episode, I'll tell you, there's a number of websites who have collected stories about these World Cup teams and have done interviews with the players. The story Wijnaldum tells is when he got the opportunity to take this free kick, it was to the right of the goalkeeper, probably 20 to 24 yards out or so. Wijnaldum took the ball and he said it. And he said, I'm taking this free kick. And there were other guys around who were saying, dude, tap it over to me. I think Marcelo Balboa was in the mix there saying, tap it over or let me take it. And then, we'll set up a play. Wijnaldum wasn't having any of it. He said, I went in my zone. I focused. Nobody said, I didn't hear anything anybody was saying. And he stepped up. That might be one of the best placed free kicks, even by today's standards. I mean, for 1994, golazo, top 10, amazing goal here. But even by today's standards, man, he tucks that beautifully in the upper left-hand corner, upper 90 for sure. And that draws the United States level with Switzerland. Just a beautiful free kick. And absolutely, Mike, they needed points. They knew if they were going to get out of this group and to not be the first host country to not advance to the knockout rounds, which unfortunately that distinction goes to South Africa in 2010. They were the first host country to not advance to the knockouts over some controversy. Go back and look that up, everybody. You'll hate the French Football Association even more than you already do. But the U.S. did not want to be the first host nation to not advance. Wijnaldum knew, the whole team knew, we got to get points against Switzerland, whether it's 3, whether it's 1, because they got Colombia coming up next in game 2. Colombia, the heavy favorite to win the whole thing here, Mike. So all I got to say is Wijnaldum, he knew that it was his moment, and he took full advantage of it, put the U.S. on his back for one play, and earned the draw against Switzerland.
Absolutely. So there's a little shot of the Pontiac Silverdome from that game. The Switzerland fans there, it was obviously taken from the Switzerland fan section. But, there's that stadium, which is gone now. I think it was finally imploded. But just a real cool thing to see how that stadium turned into dust and literally was just an abandoned building for so long. It tells you how far the world has come in the NFL and U.S. soccer through this time. So the second game up, this one here, we've got the United States against Colombia. Colombia, one of the pre-tournament favorites to win the World Cup, not just to advance, but to win the World Cup itself. A 2-1 victory for the United States. A huge win. One of the biggest wins in United States men's soccer history. 2-1. Nick, there's a lot of, the whole own goal thing where the guy had death threats. I think they actually ended up killing him. A lot of things happened in this match. This is one of the biggest matches in world football history.
I would say so. That's not an understatement, Mike, considering that it's the first time the United States has won a World Cup game in 44 years. Their last World Cup victory was in 1950 against England, 1-0. Again, a giant upset, knocking out the English, and then going 0-3 in Italy in 1990, now facing the tournament favorite. I mean, you said they were one of the pre-tournament favorites. By the time this thing started, Colombia was the heavy favorite to win the World Cup. And somehow, with an Ernie Stewart goal and an Escobar own goal, they end up getting 2 against Colombia. Reading the recaps and remembering this video, or remembering this game, you can find the video of when Colombia, within the 5th minute, had a ball cleared off the line. It was the United States defense last gasp effort to clear a ball off the line. Otherwise, it would have been 1-0 Colombia after 5 minutes, and that would have been insurmountable essentially for this U.S. team playing Colombia. But they were able to get the defensive stop. They realized they could go toe-to-toe with these guys, and a little luck and a little determination and skill were enough to give USA 3 points against Colombia. If you want to find out more about what happened with that Colombian defender Escobar, go find the ESPN 30 for 30 to Escobar's documentary, because a lot of good information. But yeah, He ended up dead, found in the trunk of a car in Colombia shortly after returning from the World Cup. They think it was the drug cartels that killed him because so many gamblers and cartels and people lost millions because Colombia did not win that game and did not win the World Cup. And I don't even think they advanced out of that group, to be perfectly honest. So that was a huge, huge game historically for both of these nations and for the game itself. No doubt.
Totally. So the third game up for U.S., they took on Romania. And this one, a little bit of a letdown. United States loses to Romania 1-0. You just come off this huge high, and I think that's probably what it was, right? You're at home. You just come off this huge, amazing victory. And Romania has definitely regressed over the years since 94. They're no longer a world powerhouse. I don't even know if they were a world powerhouse then, but at least they were you would think a Romanian team would be better than the United States team in 94. But to lose to Romania there, that's a rough one. But 1-0 is the final score in that one. Nick, what are your thoughts on that match before eventually the U.S. advancing into the round of 16 to face the eventual champions?
Sure. So, Mike, on this one, you're right. Letdown does sound like it. But again, reading some of the player interviews and everything else that came out of this World Cup, they said, look, Romania might not have had the big star, the world power, but they were great European players, very technically savvy, very tactically savvy. So it wasn't an easy game. It wasn't, a pure letdown game from the United States. This was still a very good Romanian team here. Now, you want to talk about rankings, like you said, they regressed. At that time, Romania was ranked 18th in the world, roundabout there. And currently they're ranked 37th. So Romania is still very respectable, but at the time of that World Cup, a very good squad. So the United States unable to get it done, but they do advance. Now, remember, this is a 24-team tournament. You had 6 groups. So in order to fill out the rest of that knockout bracket, they took a number of third-place teams. And thankfully, the United States was one of those teams. So despite going a win, a loss, and a draw, or a win, a draw, and a loss, if you follow, or whatever the case is there, they advanced. And it was a joyous occasion for the United States to get out. But again, Mike, who did they advance to go on and play? Who did they get to face in the U.S.'s first ever knockout round game?
Well, I mean, nothing like Brazil, the best team, on the planet, usually. The eventual World Cup winners of 94. Here's your consolation prize. Play Brazil. No, what the hell? But it is what it is. They get Brazil, and they put up a decent game. Overall, I mean, to lose 1-0 to the eventual champions is a pretty decent turnout there.
Right. The kind of takeaways from here is, the U.S. went 1-0 to the greatest footballing nation in the world. And even then, they lost Tab Ramos in that one. Brazilian Leonardo, as Ramos was kind of shielding the ball out of bounds, they were kind of fighting a little bit. Ramos tries to come around the back of him. Leonardo throws an elbow, cracks Ramos in the head, and fractures his skull. He goes out in the first half, and he even said, I never even watched the second half of that game. It was hours later, people were telling me, oh, yeah, we ended up losing. And I don't even think he ever went back and watched the second half of that game. So one of the U.S.'s best players gets knocked out from a freak injury, right? And by the way, Leonardo was so distraught over what happened, he ended up going to the hospital in tears and apologizing to Ramos after that game. So I can't say it was, premeditated. In the moment, you could see he's like, I'm going to knock this dude one. But I don't think he ever intended for that terrible injury to occur.
Right.
But that's something to keep in mind, right? The U.S. played them to a 1-goal difference in the second half without one of their best players. Huge for the United States' confidence and ego here. The other thing that the aftermath of this World Cup saw, people were saying, hey, this World Cup might have been rigged for Brazil to win it, right? Well, FIFA came out and is like, we didn't win it for Brazil. We didn't rig it for Brazil to win. But obviously we rigged it for Brazil to have an easier path to the final, and people freaked out over that. And they're like, guys, that's why we have these draws and these pots. Like, it was pretty clear we were going to put Brazil in the top pot. They're the highest ranked team. They were going to get an easy pathway. We did it on purpose. So that maybe kind of took the air out of the sails of some of these conspiracy theorists. But at the same time, FIFA obviously not known for their honesty and integrity. So another reason why the U.S. had that matchup against Brazil. So that's the USA's 4 results. In the end, a very, very respectable showing, and giving U.S. soccer fans something to really get behind and support. That's my take on it, Mike.
So do you think that was like the start of the whole FIFA scandal, right? The FBI looking into FIFA and being like, what the hell? It happens on U.S. soil. They say, okay, well, it's going to, we rigged the draws and everything like that, but not the actual games themselves, because that Brazilian team ends up going on and winning the World Cup.
Yeah.
And, maybe that was the start of the investigations and everything like that ended up wrapping up in the late 2000s, early 2010s that sent a lot of FIFA executives to jail. So
a lot of that came out in 98 as well. Like, there were some allegations about bribery for the 98 bid going to France, but we'll get into that in our next World Cup time machine.
There you go. So again, look out for that. We'll be doing the 98 France World Cup for the USMNT time machine as well. But yeah, I mean, that's is kind of tricky. But let's talk a little bit about the roster itself. The team that kind of, I mean, we talked about a little bit in the 90 World Cup time machine. The team that kind of started soccer as we know it here in the United States with this home World Cup. Let's talk about the players, the household names. Who do we have that are, go down this roster? Who are the guys that really stood out to you?
Absolutely, Mike. Now, our 1990 World Cup video really shows some of these guys who had played there. So we're going to jump, we're not going to talk about those guys as much because we talked about them in our last video, but we'll talk about some of the household names that emerged from this one. We mentioned Marcelo Balboa before in our last video. It was his ridiculous bicycle kick from the 94 World Cup that didn't go in, but really that made him part of the MLS when the Colorado owner, Phil Anschutz, says, I need that guy on my team. So they're definitely looking at these players here. And most of these guys, the theme here is that all these guys played domestically at some point, whether they were MLS originals when 96 rolled around and the league started, or they came back to play in the MLS at some point and retire here. So to these guys, playing in this World Cup 1994 clearly had meaning for them, helping the United States grow soccer domestically. And to me, that's the greatest takeaway from this World Cup. Now, to look at a few of the specific names, you got Thomas Dooley, a D-mid, 81 U.S. caps, a foundational MLS player. He's currently coaching in Malaysia and a former Philippine national team, still affecting the world game. You got Ernie Stewart, 101 USMNT caps, the current USSF sporting director, first ever to hold that title in U.S. history. U.S. Soccer recognized we need to change things up, and they brought in Ernie Stewart. He had a couple seasons in MLS as well, playing for DC United. You got Roy Wegerle, Rapids and DC United, 41 USMNT caps. This is a guy that's often overlooked. He got a contract with Chelsea in 1986, one of the top clubs in England and the world at that time. He got a contract with them in 86. Didn't pan out for the first team, but he was still there. Now, here's a little bit of the Roy Wegerle trivia. He was part of what's considered the most lopsided trade in league history when DC United sent him to the Tampa Bay Mutiny for Roy Lassiter, who became the all-time leading goal scorer in MLS history at the time, prior to Chris Wondolowski. So DC got Lassiter, one of the best players in MLS history. Mutiny got Wegerle, who retired the year after that trade. So it's still bad deals going on even then in MLS.
One goal, Nick.
Yeah,
one
right?
goal. I mean, big name. Big name for U.S. soccer. I mean, there were plenty other big names in MLS, like from that Colombia team, Carlos Valderrama. was with the mutiny.
Yes.
Maybe that was part of the bring-in, right? Let's bring in Wegerle, who is the star of the 94 team. I don't know about star, but one of the stars of the U.S. team in 94. And, the guy gets one goal, and they get rid of Roy Lassiter, who ends up leading the league history in goals for 20 years.
Mike, who else stands out on this team to you?
Yeah, so Kobe Jones. I mean, we listened to him the other night when we were doing the Monterey Club America Live. Kobe Jones was doing announcing for that game on Fox Sports 1. Kobe Jones, still a legend, played 12 seasons for the Galaxy, played in the English Championship as well as in Brazil, but for the most part stands out with the Galaxy. He was a stalwart for the Galaxy, 164 USMNT caps. He's in the Hall of Fame.
He was the record holder for U.S. appearances for a while.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best. When you think about U.S. soccer, you think of like maybe 5 to 10 guys. He's in that list, right? I mean, Kobe Jones, maybe it's the hair, maybe it's the play, maybe a little bit of both.
He was so fast.
But either way, Kobe Jones as well. Frank Lopez, 39 caps for the USMNT. I know the Fire fans have a lot to say about Frank Lopez. I agree. He's not that good of a coach, but he's an MLS original through Kansas City and Chicago.
And he's Greek, so I got to defend him a little bit.
And there you go. He's Greek, so Nick can talk about his Greek players and some, young 18-year-old that's on like the Romanian second team that plays for Greece.
Easy, Mike, easy. Klopas was a Greek legend. He definitely screwed his legacy up with his coaching career. That's for sure. Who else you got, man? Who else you got?
So another one to light the list here is Joe Max Moore, 100 USMNT caps, 24 goals in 100 games. That's a pretty good scoring rate. So never heard of the guy before in my life, but that's a good one. Brad Friedel as well, goalkeeper with the Crew from 96 to 97, went on into England. Tell us a little bit about Brad Friedel.
Dude, Brad Friedel to me was real quick. Joe Max Moore, you said 24 goals in 100 games. He's still 6th all time on USMNT scoring, behind Dempsey, Donovan, Altidore, Winalda, and McBride. Those are your top 5. Joe Max Moore comes in 6th.
Wow.
But Brad Friedel, an MLS original, he played with the Crew from 96 to 97, and to me really was part of the rise of the United States goalkeeping prowess. Like, he played for legendary clubs: Tottenham, Aston Villa, Blackburn Rovers, Liverpool, and then, previously his, MLS experience, Columbus Crew, Galatasaray, and Brøndby. So, like, he played for some legendary clubs. Here's a little trivia that I figured out from Friedel in researching this. He started his own nonprofit soccer academy for underprivileged kids to get soccer experience, paid for it all out of pocket, and unfortunately, he dropped like $10 million into this thing, couldn't get any corporate sponsorships after the economic collapse in 08, and he ended up filing bankruptcy shortly after that in the UK. So, like, give the dude credit, an ambassador overseas, a huge talent in the net, did everything he could to promote the game in the United States. And unfortunately, his most recent memory, though, is, he couldn't get New England Revolution to play very well and got replaced by Bruce Arena. So that is Brad Friedel. No doubt we can't underestimate what he did for the game. Coaching, probably not his thing.
Yeah.
Moving down the list here, man, Claudio Reina. He was on the roster, but never actually played a game due to injury. Did end up playing in 3 other World Cups. He's the original Captain America to a lot of people. When he was playing in England, he was referred to as Captain America by the Brits. Did retire playing with Red Bulls New York and is the current sporting director of Austin FC. Real quick here, Fernando Clavijo, 61 caps. Never played in the U.S. Or never played in the MLS. Did a lot of futsal and indoor soccer. And unfortunately passed away in 2019 after a 5-year battle with cancer. But he's kind of the guy, like, you read about this squad, he was an older guy. He was already like 30, 32 years old at least, if not older, at the time of this World Cup. He was he was 38 years old at the time of this World Cup. So he's a guy who really bridged kind of the older generation and kind of the original core of players, bringing in the new guys like a Alexi Lawless, one of my favorite players of all time, and not just because he's Greek, and not just because he had one of the best haircuts I've ever seen, but because this guy has done everything possible for American soccer, right? He was the first American ever to play in Serie A, played for Padova. He's played for New England Revolution, the Metro Stars, Kansas City Wizards, and the Galaxy during his MLS career. He had 96 U.S. caps, played in a couple World Cups. He was the president and or the GM for 3 MLS clubs, San Jose, New England, and the Galaxy. By the way, when he was running the Galaxy, they signed David Beckham. So he's got his name tied to one of the greatest MLS moves ever. He's currently an analyst and broadcaster. And yes, I already mentioned he's half Greek, but that's, all you need to drop to be good in my book. So that's, again, one of my favorite players. I had his poster hanging over my bed as a kid. So Alexi Lawless, another one of those household names that really, really brought U.S. into the modern era of soccer.
Totally. I mean, this World Cup, this really started it out for the United States, for soccer here in the USA. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for this World Cup in 1994. MLS was launched because of this World Cup. So one of the stipulations for the United States to become host of the 94 World Cup was they had to start their own domestic league, which was the MLS. That's a big piece here, because we kind of take for granted, we have this league that has 30 teams in it, 27, whatever the hell the number is now. But that was a stipulation of this World Cup. And that is something that is really important to think about. And here we are. 2 guys talking about soccer, talking about the United States World Cup in 94, talking about MLS every day. It wouldn't be here because of this World Cup. So overall, a great World Cup. We will be back probably in a week or two with our 1998 France World Cup Time Machine episode. A lot of fun here on this one, Nick. So thanks to everybody for watching. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below. Turn on your notifications so you don't miss any of our awesome American soccer content, whether we go live for live stream reaction watch-alongs or our regular podcast episodes, picks and predictions, special episodes like this, you name it. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. And we will talk to you all very, very soon. Thanks for joining us for this 1994 World Cup Time Machine from the United States World Cup. It was a fun one. Talk to you guys real soon.